What happens when courage suddenly turns into fear? How can someone who once promised absolute loyalty end up denying the very person they swore to follow? And what can Peter's darkest moment teach us about faith, weakness, and redemption? The courtyard was cold that night. A small charcoal fire burned near the entrance of the high priest's residence, casting flickering light across the stone floor. Servants and guards stood nearby, warming their hands as they spoke quietly among themselves. Jerusalem was unusually restless. Just hours earlier, Jesus had been arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane. Soldiers had marched him through the streets, and word had begun to spread among those connected to the temple leadership. Something important was happening, and many people were curious about the outcome. Among those standing near the fire was a man who did not want to attract attention: Peter. Only a few hours before, Peter had boldly declared that he would follow Jesus anywhere, even to death. When Jesus warned that Peter would deny him, Peter could hardly believe it. His loyalty felt unshakable. But now the situation was very different. The man he had followed for years had been arrested. The religious authorities were angry. Soldiers and temple guards were everywhere, and Peter was standing in the middle of it all, trying not to be noticed. At first, he had managed to blend into the crowd. The glow of the firelight hid his face among the other figures gathered in the courtyard. But tension was building, and people were watching closely. Someone looked at Peter carefully. "You aren't one of this man's disciples too, are you?" they asked. This question was simple, but it carried enormous weight. Admitting the truth could place Peter in danger. If Jesus was being treated like a criminal, anyone associated with him might also face arrest or punishment. The fear of that possibility crept into Peter's mind, and in that moment, Peter responded with a short, sharp answer: "I am not." The words were quick, almost automatic, but they carried heavy meaning. Peter had just denied that he even belonged to Jesus' group of followers. The courtyard continued buzzing with activity. People moved in and out of rooms as leaders questioned Jesus inside the house. Guards shifted their positions, and the small fire crackled quietly in the cold air. Peter stayed near the fire. Perhaps he hoped that staying close would allow him to hear news about what was happening to Jesus. Perhaps he also felt that leaving too quickly would draw suspicion. So he remained there, trying to appear calm. But someone else noticed him. Among the servants standing near the fire was a relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off earlier in the garden. In the chaos of the arrest, Peter had drawn a sword and attacked one of the high priest's servants named Malchus. Jesus had immediately stopped the violence and healed the wounded man. But the relative of Malchus had not forgotten what he saw. Now, as the firelight illuminated Peter's face, recognition began to grow. "Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" the man asked. This question was even more dangerous. It connected Peter directly to the arrest scene. If the accusation gained attention, Peter could easily be identified as one of Jesus' closest followers. Fear tightened around him. The confident disciple who had once walked on water toward Jesus, the disciple who had declared unbreakable loyalty, now faced a moment of intense pressure. And once again, Peter denied it. "I am not," he insisted. The words came out quickly, as if he hoped to shut down the conversation before others became involved. Around him, the guards and servants continued their quiet conversations. Some may have believed him. Others may have simply lost interest in the exchange. But something else happened at that exact moment. In the distance, a rooster crowed. The sound echoed faintly through the early morning air. And suddenly, the reality of Jesus' earlier warning came crashing into Peter's mind. Only hours before, during the Last Supper, Jesus had spoken words that seemed impossible at the time. "Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. Peter had rejected the idea completely. He believed his loyalty was stronger than that. Yet here he was, and the rooster had crowed. In the Gospel of John, the moment is brief but powerful. The crowing of the rooster marks the completion of Peter's 3rd denial. In the other Gospel accounts, we learn that Peter immediately realized what he had done. The weight of his actions overwhelmed him. The disciple who loved Jesus deeply had denied even knowing him. Fear had taken control in a moment when courage seemed impossible. But Peter's story is not just a story about failure. It is a story about humanity. Many people imagine the disciples as spiritual heroes who never struggled with weakness, but the Bible shows something very different. The followers of Jesus were real people. They experienced doubt. They experienced fear. They experienced moments where their faith was tested in ways they did not expect. Peter's denial is one of the most honest moments recorded in Scripture. He was brave when he pulled out a sword in the garden. But courage in a moment of action is not always the same as courage in a moment of quiet pressure. Standing by that fire, surrounded by strangers who might expose him, Peter faced a different kind of test. And in that moment, fear won. Yet the story of Peter does not end in that courtyard. The same man who denied Jesus 3 times would later become one of the most influential leaders in the early Christian church. The same disciple who once feared being recognized would later stand boldly in Jerusalem and preach about the resurrection of Jesus to large crowds. How did that transformation happen? The answer lies in the grace and forgiveness that Jesus would offer after the resurrection. Later, in John chapter 21, Jesus would meet Peter again beside another charcoal fire. It is not a coincidence. The location and the fire would remind Peter of this painful night. But instead of condemnation, Jesus would offer restoration. 3 times, Jesus would ask Peter a simple question: "Do you love me?" And 3 times, Peter would answer yes. In that moment, Jesus gave Peter the opportunity to affirm his love just as many times as he had denied it. This act of restoration reveals the heart of the gospel. Failure is not the end of the story for those who follow Christ. Peter's denial shows us how easily fear can influence our decisions, but his restoration shows us how powerful forgiveness can be. There are moments in life when people feel they have failed God, moments when fear, doubt, or pressure causes them to act in ways they regret. The story of Peter reminds us that even the most devoted followers can stumble. But it also reminds us that God's grace is greater than our failures. Jesus knew Peter would deny him, yet he still chose Peter. He still loved Peter, and he still gave Peter a mission. That mission would eventually lead Peter to preach the message of Christ throughout the Roman world. History tells us that Peter would ultimately face persecution and even death for his faith. The man who once feared being recognized by a servant girl would later refuse to deny Jesus again. That transformation is one of the most powerful testimonies in the Bible. It reminds us that spiritual growth often comes through moments of weakness. When people recognize their failures, they also recognize their need for God's mercy. Peter's tears that night were not the end of his journey. They were the beginning of a deeper faith. Standing by that fire, Peter learned a painful lesson about the limits of human strength. But in the years that followed, he would learn something even greater about the power of God's grace. The crowing of the rooster marked the moment when Peter realized the truth about himself. Yet that same moment also pointed forward to a future where forgiveness and restoration would redefine his life. The courtyard scene may appear small compared to the larger events of the crucifixion and resurrection, but it carries a message that continues to resonate with believers today. Faith is not about never failing. Faith is about returning to Christ after failure. It is about trusting that His mercy is stronger than our mistakes. Peter's second and third denials remind us how quickly fear can influence our choices. But they also remind us that Jesus never abandons those who truly seek Him, even when we stumble, even when we fall short. The story of Peter shows that God can transform weakness into strength and failure into purpose. The rooster crowed in the early morning darkness, but beyond that dark night, a new day was coming. A day when the risen Christ would restore His disciple. A day when the message of forgiveness would begin spreading across the world. And a day when Peter himself would become a bold witness to the power of the gospel. Thank you for watching this video. If this story helped you reflect on the powerful lessons behind Peter's denials and God's incredible grace, please like this video, follow the Holy Path Insights channel, and share this message with someone who may need encouragement today.